North America correspondent Noel Phillips is in New York for us this morning. So, Noel, we were talking to you yesterday, 24 hours later. What's the reaction been like?
Good to see you, Ben and Kate. Now, mixed reviews so far, but the overwhelming feeling is that the couple are winning the PR brand management strategy. Harry and Meghan are not just rewriting the royal narrative that we all know of their lives so far, but they are creating this brand new American fairy tale. And it seems to be resonating with a lot of people. I spoke to one woman who told me earlier today she was in tears watching the series. They are just couple goals, she went on to say. Another man, I was expecting a lot of drama and for tea to be spilled. I assume he's referring to the accusations perhaps of racism, bullying. He then went on to ask me, is your country really that prejudiced and outdated when it comes to race? On the issue of race, I also reached out to a family member of George Floyd. We of course know that the Duchess of Sussex supported those protests and spoke out after George Floyd's death. That family member basically said to me, we will gladly take them if Britain don't want them. And a review in the Wall Street Journal simply said, a royal pity party on Netflix. Ben and Kate, just 6 more days to go now before those remaining series are released by Netflix. It's
interesting as well, Noel, isn't it? As you charted those first few episodes, the first episode was very much them falling in love. Second episode was what was happening in the third episode. Towards the end of that third episode, the intrusion, some more of their sort of more concerning aspects were becoming very apparent. So, as you say, the next 3 coming next week feel like they will be even more explosive.
Feels like they have a bit more of a sting in them, potentially, for those that don't agree with Harry and Meghan's position. Well, joining us now is social activist Nimco Ali and royal commentator Jennie Bond, who charted the highs and lows of the Elizabethan age, didn't you, Jennie? Well, let's come to you first of all. You're there then, Jennie. What did you make of it? Did you watch with excitement? Did you watch with interest? Did you feel, as part of those covering the royal family and royal correspondent in general, you were in the line of fire?
Yes, certainly on the latter point, yes. I was a bit underwhelmed, actually, by these first 3 hours. As you say, I assume there's more to come of it, to believe the hype, is it, in the trailers? Certainly they were explosive. I thought it was a story of love, great love. And if you're that invested in Harry and Meghan, you want to know the minutiae of how they met and how he was late on the first date, that's all very charming, very fascinating. A love story. Visceral hate. And that hate is coming from Harry for all of the media, lumped all together in one stinking heap. And then race, because he believes, and he has every reason probably to do so, that race was at the heart of much of the criticism. So altogether, lots of suggestions and allegations, but a bit wishy-washy, a bit woolly, nothing specific, and no major blows, I think, landed against the royal family.
Jennie, so on that issue of race, which is really apparent in the documentary, and certainly the comments that both he and Meghan make through it, do you believe he has a case? You were there, you have been, as Kate was saying, front and centre of charting that Elizabethan age. But there's certainly, when you look at some of what they're talking about, and some of the headlines particularly, it seems really stark.
Yeah, some of the headlines were very stark and very cruel and very unjust. But I think when he talks about unconscious bias, I have a huge amount of sympathy, but I don't think this is exclusive to the royal family. So I think in society at large, and Harry included himself, and I include myself in this, I have had a journey to learn about unconscious bias. We are all learning about the way we should speak and our care with language, and that's an important lesson. So I have a lot of sympathy with him on that, but I don't think it's exclusive to the family. I think, at ITN, at Sky, at the BBC, we're all learning how to communicate better.
Well, let's have a chat, shall we, to Nimco. What was your gut feeling as you watched it? Were you thinking, thank goodness someone has spoken out? Or did it leave you uncomfortable in any way?
No, it didn't leave me uncomfortable in terms of watching the documentary. I think what has left me uncomfortable is the rhetoric around it. I think 2 things can be true at the same time. Meghan did experience racism and the media did racially abuse her. But also at the same time, we don't have to make an enemy of William and Kate, who are both people who are just doing their duty as part of the monarchy. So I think there has to be some kind of reality check of a lot of us who are trying to take sides. And we have to understand, as much as this is a royal family, this is still a family issue. to, and they're just airing their grievances publicly. So I wish we were all a little bit more sensitive to the both brothers, essentially.
That's interesting, because I think that, well, we don't know, do we? But certainly, you know, friends of William have been quoted in the paper today, not named, but quoted, and palace insiders are saying that there is hurt and anger from inside the royal family at it. And you see that as a family hurt, in a sense.
No, 100%. And this is, I think, one of the things that really stands out is that Meghan, being an only child, I think the complexity of coming from a big family, especially one that was within an institution, it's going to be completely different for her. But then also we have to understand that Meghan was suffering and Harry loves her, and to see her, the person he loves, which he also says is similar to what happened to his mum, suffering was something that was traumatic and triggered his own mental health issues. So I saw this with a lot of compassion. But then ultimately, I got my OB from Prince Charles. I've met, I haven't met Meghan, but I've met Harry, and I've met Kate. And I think one of the things that we could all agree on is that these are people that want to be able to push things forward in society. And I don't think this vile hate that's coming towards her is actually helpful at all.
So the collaboration between the brothers and that as a family is much more powerful than the division, of course. I'm sure that we'd all agree with that, Nimco. And actually, there's that lovely moment in one of the episodes, I'm not sure which one it was, where the four of them launched their foundation, Jenny, and I'm sure... was it the third? You will remember that. And all of us welcomed that, and all of the media welcomed that in a way of saying, this is the future of the monarchy. These young people are much more in touch than some of their older family members. And look how far we could push this now.
Yeah, and that's some of the confusion in the documentary, I think, because it's shot through with these this criticism of the way that Meghan was treated, and yet it also acknowledges that she was welcomed, as Harry himself says, as a breath of fresh air, and how suited she was for the role. And he thought, gosh, this is my dream. This is a woman who can do this, and I love her. It all seemed absolutely perfect, didn't it? And at the end, I've come to the conclusion that perhaps what we might learn is that William was right all the time when he suggested, we are told, that Harry should take his time and just think whether Meghan wasn't the right woman for him, or whether she was cut out for this role. Because the level of unpreparedness, I was going to say ignorance, but it's not ignorance, just unpreparedness for life within the royal family is astonishing. I mean, she didn't understand the formality. She didn't understand it was a hierarchy and she wasn't going to be the chief executive. She didn't understand our manners, our culture, the hugging. All of this suggests to me that she needed more time to assess whether she, an independent, forthright woman of mature years, should want to go into the structure of the royal family. I think she needed more time, and William was right.
Well, that's an interesting perspective on it. Of course, a lot of criticisms, as you said, was of the media itself and newspapers particularly. And this idea of a royal rota, which you won't necessarily know when you pick up your newspapers, something that exists, that there are newspapers that are given specific access. And what Harry finds very difficult is the fact that those newspapers that you could be going to give an interview and it would change, it might be one person doing it for everybody or whatever, you would go and speak to that newspaper, even though that day on the headline, they might have something very negative. He felt that it was some kind of collusion that was difficult to bear.
Yeah, he was very rude, wasn't he, about royal correspondence. He was very cheeky, and I do take issue with him. I was quite annoyed at him because he suggested that we were called royal correspondents by our newspapers or our bosses simply so that there could be added credibility. He gave no cognizance to the fact that actually we're experienced, we study, we're trained, and that's our speciality. So he just threw everyone into the same dung heap, basically, and his contempt for all of the media knows no bounds.
I wonder, Nimco, having seen those first 3 episodes, and the next week the last 3 will drop, you know, in the heat of what they've been through, and no question it has been extraordinarily stressful for both of them in so many different ways. A whirlwind romance, they've fallen in love, they've got married, they've had a family, they've changed countries. He's removed himself from the royal family. 10 years' time, when they sit down and look back, Do you think they'll have any regrets?
I don't think they'll have any regrets. And I just want to kind of bring back to something that Jennie just said. Ultimately, I think, again, attributing words to Prince William and then acting though as these are words of authority, in the sense that Meghan should have to put up or didn't have the gravitas in order to deal with the abuse that she was facing. I think this gaslighting of women are the whole point of the fact that, well, this is just the way that the media works and you have to deal with it. It's completely unacceptable. And also, there was no need for Jennie to kind of tell her about her mature age. I think ultimately the reality is that Harry is right about the media, and the media is sexist and racist, and we have to look at ourselves. I don't really care how much research you do as a royal correspondent; it still doesn't absorb you from the realities of the things that you write. And I think ultimately, into your question, Ben, I don't think they're going to have any regrets in 10 years' time. But I ultimately do hope that the two brothers do come together, because, like you said, this new generation of royals really care about things that are not just happening in this country, but that are happening globally. Like, for example, we could be talking about the women in Iran, the things that happen in Afghanistan, and I know those are things that Meghan and Kate both care about. So let's really give these women the opportunities to talk about the things that they care about, rather than creating this kind of hoo-ha around the fallout of the brothers, essentially.
Jennie, would you like to respond to some of the things that Nimco mentioned?
Well, only I mentioned mature age because I was trying to point out that she was an independent woman. She was experienced. She wasn't some ingenue. And that was to be welcome within the royal family. And as for just what I write or what I say, well, as a professional journalist, I try to always get an accurate picture of what's going on, go to both sides of the argument. And I must say that the palace didn't like what I said a lot of the time. I mean, Harry's suggesting that royal correspondents are an extension, a PR extension of the royal family. Nothing could be further from the truth. They were frequently very annoyed about what I said. And only once in 14 years at the BBC, did the palace ring me up and say they liked my report. Well, I was furious. I was very angry and thought that obviously there must be something wrong with my report.